Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The wind howled through the streets of Chicago's South Side, rattling the windows of Mercy General Hospital as Tamia Jackson pushed through her second straight night shift. It was a little past midnight, and the emergency room buzzed with a restless energy. Paramedics wheeling in stretchers, nurses barking orders, and the sharp tang of antiseptic hanging heavy in the air. Tamia adjusted her scrubs, the navy blue fabric clinging to her skin after hours of running from one patient to the next. Her sneakers squeaked against the scuffed linoleum floor, and her braids, pulled tight into a high bun, felt like they were tugging at her scalp. She was bone-tired, but there was no room for that here, not with lives on the line. She glanced at the clock above the nurse's station, 12:17 a.m. Just 6 more hours, she told herself, rubbing her eyes. 6 more hours, and she could crash on the lumpy couch back at the apartment she shared with her mom, Loretta, and her little sister, Jada. The thought of Jada tightened her chest. 15 years old and stuck with chronic kidney disease, Jada was the reason Tamia had busted her ass through nursing school, juggling loans and part-time gigs at the corner store. Every paycheck went straight to rent, bills, or Jada's meds. Tonight, though, she had to focus. The ER didn't care about her problems. "Tamia, room 4 now!" Dr. Ellis's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and urgent. She was a wiry woman with gray streaks in her hair, the kind of doctor who didn't mess around. Tamia grabbed a clipboard and hustled down the hall, dodging a janitor mopping up a spill. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a harsh glow on her dark skin as she pushed open the door to room 4. Inside, it was a different kind of scene. No screaming kid with a broken arm or strung-out junkie this time, just a man sitting on the exam table, clutching his right hand like it was a live grenade. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Tamia's whole wardrobe. Black wool, tailored to fit, though it was ruined now. The sleeve was singed, and a dark stain spread across the chest, reeking of something chemical, maybe gasoline. His face was half hidden under a mess of dark hair, but his eyes, steel gray and piercing, locked onto her the second she stepped in. "All right, what we got here?" Tamia said, keeping her tone brisk as she set the clipboard down. She wasn't in the mood for small talk, not with her feet aching and her stomach growling from a missed dinner break. He didn't answer right away, just stared at her like she'd walked in with a gun instead of a stethoscope. Up close, she could see the sweat beading on his forehead, the way his jaw clenched tight. Pain, she figured, or shock. She stepped closer, reaching for his hand to check the damage, and that's when it happened. "Don't touch me!" he snapped, yanking his arm back so fast the exam table creaked. His voice was deep, rough, like he'd smoked a pack a day, though he didn't smell like cigarettes. Just that sharp, burnt scent clinging to him. Tamia froze, hands hovering mid-air, eyebrows shooting up. "Chill out, man. I'm just trying to help you. What's your deal?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing under the collar of his shirt. I don't do this. People don't touch me." She blinked, caught off guard by the raw edge in his words. For a second, she thought he was just another rich asshole who didn't like a black girl getting too close. Wouldn't be the first time. But there was something else in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or something deeper. She lowered her hand slow, keeping her voice steady. "Well, you're in my ER now, so you're gonna have to deal with it. Let me see that hand or you're walking out of here with a stump." He hesitated, those gray eyes flicking over her face like he was sizing her up. Then, grudgingly, he extended his arm. The hand was a mess, red and blistered, second-degree burns at least. with patches of skin peeling back from where whatever blew up had hit him. Tamia winced inwardly, but kept her game face on. She'd seen worse. "All right, hold still," she said, grabbing a pair of gloves from the box on the counter. The latex snapped against her wrists as she pulled them on, and she caught the way he flinched at the sound. Weird dude, she thought, but she didn't have time to play therapist. She took his wrist gently, turning his hand under the light to get a better look. The burns stretched from his knuckles to his forearm, angry and raw, and the smell hit her harder now, chemical, metallic, like a lab gone wrong. "What happened?" she asked, more to fill the silence than anything else. She reached for a saline bottle and some gauze, moving slow so he wouldn't freak out again. He exhaled, a shaky sound that didn't match the polished suit or the expensive watch glinting on his other wrist. "Lab accident. Prototype blew up in my face." "Prototype?" She glanced at him, squirting saline over the burns. He tensed but didn't pull away this time. "What, you some kind of mad scientist?" "Something like that," he muttered, his voice softening a little. "Tech stuff. Doesn't matter." She smirked, dabbing the gauze against his skin. "Yeah, well, your tech stuff's got you looking like a barbecue gone wrong. You're lucky it's just your hand." He didn't laugh, but the corner of his mouth twitched, like he wasn't used to people talking to him like that. She kept working, cleaning the wound with steady hands, explaining each step as she went. Habit from dealing with scared kids and nervous old folks. "This is going to sting a little, but it'll keep the infection out. Then I'll wrap it up, and you'll be good to go. Don't go playing with fire again, all right?" He nodded, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Up close, she could see the lines etched around his eyes, the faint stubble shadowing his jaw. Older than her for sure, mid-30s maybe, but there was something boyish about him too, something unguarded that slipped through when she brushed her gloved fingers over his palm. He sucked in a breath sharp and quick, and she paused. "You good?" she asked, meeting his gaze. "Yeah," he said, too fast. "I just haven't felt that in a while." "Felt what? Pain?" She tilted her head, confused. "No. Someone touching me." His voice dropped low, almost a whisper, and for a second the room felt smaller, the air thicker. Tamia's hands stilled, the gauze hovering over his skin. She didn't know what to say to that. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them, like he'd been locked up in a tower his whole life, waiting for someone to break in. She cleared her throat, brushing it off. "Well, don't get used to it. I'm just doing my job." She finished wrapping the bandage, securing it with tape, and stepped back, peeling off her gloves. "Keep it clean, change it daily, and see a doctor in a couple days. You'll be fine." He flexed his hand, testing the bandage, then looked up at her. "Thanks. I mean it." "Yeah, whatever." She shrugged, grabbing the clipboard to scribble some notes. "What's your name, anyway? Gotta put it in the system." "Malcolm Reed," he said, and something about the way he said it, like it carried weight, made her pause. She'd heard that name before, hadn't she? Some big-shot tech guy, maybe. She didn't keep up with that stuff, but Jada would know. Her sister was always glued to her laptop, geeking out over coding and gadgets. "Cool. Don't blow yourself up again, Malcolm Reed," she said, flashing a quick grin before heading for the door. She needed air, coffee, something to shake off the weird vibe he'd left her with. "Tamia," he called after her, and she stopped, surprised he'd caught her name from the badge pinned to her scrubs. "You're good at this." She turned, leaning against the doorframe. "Yeah, well, I better be. Ain't nobody else gonna pay the bills around here." She didn't wait for a reply, just slipped out into the hall, the door swinging shut behind her. Back at the nurse's station, Tamia slumped into a chair, rubbing her temples. The clipboard sat heavy in her lap, Malcolm Reed's name staring up at her in her own messy handwriting. She couldn't shake the way he'd looked at her, like she'd cracked something open in him, something he didn't even know was there. It was stupid, she told herself. Just another patient, just another night. But her fingers still tingled where they'd brushed his skin, even through the gloves. "Yo, Tamia, you good?" Keisha's voice jolted her out of it. Her best friend plopped down next to her, a styrofoam cup of coffee in hand. Keisha was all curves and attitude, her box braids swinging as she leaned over to peek at the clipboard. "Who's this Malcolm dude? He the one who had you running around like a headless chicken?" "Nah, just some guy with a burnt hand," Tamia said, shoving the clipboard away. "Weird as hell, though. Freaked out when I touched him." Keisha snorted, sipping her coffee. "Sounds like he's got issues. Rich guy, right? You can tell by the suit. Bet he's one of those tech bros from downtown." "Maybe," Tamia shrugged, but her mind was still stuck on those gray eyes, that shaky voice. "Don't matter, long as he's out of my hair." "Girl, you need to get out of here, period," Keisha said, nudging her. "You're 20, not 40. When's the last time you had fun?" "Fun don't pay for Jada's dialysis," Tamia shot back. But there was no heat in it. Keisha was right. She couldn't remember the last time she'd done anything for herself. Nursing school, work, Jada's doctor visits. It was all a blur. She was supposed to be young, free, living it up. But most days she felt like she was drowning. Keisha gave her a look, the kind that said she wasn't buying it. But before she could push, Dr. Ellis barked from across the room. "Jackson, room 7, stat!" Tamia groaned, hauling herself up. "Duty calls. Catch you later." As she trudged down the hall, the cold Chicago wind slipped through a cracked window, chilling her to the bone. She thought about home. Loretta probably asleep on the couch with the TV blaring. Jada curled up with her laptop, fighting through another rough night. Then she thought about Malcolm Reed, sitting alone in that exam room, his burned hand wrapped in her careful stitches. Something about him stuck with her, like a song she couldn't get out of her head. She didn't know it yet, but that night wasn't just another shift. It was the start of something bigger, something that would turn her whole world upside down. Across town, in a sleek penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Malcolm Reed stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city lights. His bandaged hand throbbed under the gauze, but he barely noticed. All he could think about was the girl in the ER, her steady hands, her sharp tongue, the way she'd looked at him like he was just another guy, not the untouchable billionaire everyone else saw. He flexed his fingers, feeling the echo of her touch through the layers of fabric, and for the first time in years, he didn't pull away from the memory. He didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Something had shifted, something he couldn't name, and it all started with her. Back at Mercy General, Tamia finished her shift as the sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. She clocked out, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the biting cold, her breath fogging in the air. She had no idea what was coming, no clue that the man with the burned hand would walk back into her life and change everything. But for now, she just wanted to go home, hug Jada, and crash. The city hummed around her, alive and restless, and somewhere deep down, she felt it too. A spark, a pull, a promise of something more. Hey y'all, if you're hooked on Tamia and Malcolm's first spark, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where you watching from tonight? Tamia Jackson shoved her hands deep into the pockets of her beat-up parka as she trudged through the gray slush of South Side streets, the early morning chill biting at her fingertips. The sun was barely up, a faint glow fighting through the heavy clouds over Chicago, and the city was already waking up. Cars honking, buses rumbling, a dude shouting into his phone on the corner. She pulled her hood tighter, her breath puffing out in little clouds as she replayed the night in her head. That Malcolm Reed guy, his burned hand, his weird vibe, kept creeping back into her thoughts, no matter how hard she tried to shake him off. It was dumb, she told herself. Just some rich dude with a messed up hand. She had bigger things to worry about. The apartment building she called home loomed ahead, a squat brick box with peeling paint and a busted buzzer that hadn't worked in years. She climbed the stairs two at a time, the familiar creak of the wood under her sneakers, a weird kind of comfort. Third floor, apartment 3B. She fumbled with her keys, the metal cold against her skin, and pushed the door open. Inside, the air smelled like burnt toast and cheap lavender air freshener. Loretta swore made the place feel fancy. The living room was a mess. Blankets slung over the couch where her mom had crashed, an empty coffee mug on the scratched-up table, the TV flickering with some infomercial about a miracle mop. Tamia kicked off her shoes, letting them thud against the wall, and peeked into the tiny bedroom she shared with Jada. Her little sister was still asleep, curled up under a pile of quilts, her skinny frame barely making a dent in the mattress. The laptop Tamia had scraped together cash to buy her last Christmas sat open on the pillow, screen dark, but probably still warm from late-night coding sessions. Jada's chest rose and fell, slow, too slow, and Tamia's stomach twisted. She stepped closer, brushing a hand over Jada's forehead. Cool, clammy, but no fever. Good enough for now. "Tamia, that you?" Loretta's voice rasped from the kitchen, rough from years of chain smoking before she'd quit for Jada's sake. "Yeah, Ma," Tamia called back, keeping her voice low so she wouldn't wake Jada. She shuffled into the narrow kitchen where Loretta stood hunched over the sink, rinsing a plate. Her mom's hair was wrapped in a faded scarf, and her old flannel robe hung loose on her frame. She'd been a big woman once, strong, loud, the kind who'd scare off trouble with a glare. But the years had worn her down, left her looking smaller than she should. "You look like hell," Loretta said, glancing over her shoulder. "Rough night?" "Always is." Tamia grabbed a mug from the cabinet and poured herself some coffee from the pot on the counter. It was lukewarm and bitter, but she didn't care. "How's Jada?" "Same as yesterday. Tired. Kept asking for you." Loretta dried her hands on a dish towel, turning to lean against the sink. Her eyes, dark like Tamia's but sharper, pinned her daughter in place. "You can't keep doing this, baby. Working yourself to death ain't gonna fix her." "I'm fine, Ma." Tamia took a sip, wincing as the coffee hit her tongue. "We need the money. You know that." Loretta sighed, a heavy sound that filled the room. "I know. Just hate seeing you carry it all. You're 20, Tamia. Supposed to be out there living, not stuck in some hospital wiping up blood and puke." Tamia shrugged, staring into her mug. "Living's overrated. Long as Jada's good, I'm good." Her mom didn't argue, just shook her head and shuffled back to the couch. Tamia stayed in the kitchen, sipping her coffee slow, letting the quiet settle over her. She wanted to crawl into bed, pass out for a few hours before her next shift, but her mind wouldn't shut off. Malcolm Reed, those gray eyes, that shaky voice. She didn't get why he stuck with her like this. Maybe it was the way he'd flinched, like her touch was a live wire. Or maybe she was just tired and overthinking it. She finished her coffee, rinsed the mug, and headed for the bedroom. Jada stirred as she climbed into the twin bed on the other side, the springs creaking under her weight. "Tamia?" Jada's voice was soft, groggy, her eyes cracking open. "Yeah, it's me. Go back to sleep." Tamia reached over, smoothing a hand over Jada's braids. "You smell like hospital," Jada mumbled, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Occupational hazard." Tamia grinned, settling back against the pillow. How you feeling? Like crap. But I finished that app I was working on. Wanna see? Later, nerd. Rest first. Tamia closed her eyes, the exhaustion finally catching up. Jada's breathing evened out beside her, and for a minute, everything felt okay. 3 days later, Tamia was back at Mercy General, the ER humming with its usual chaos. She'd just finished stitching up a kid who'd sliced his palm on a broken bottle when Keisha sidled up to her at the nurse's station, a smirk plastered on her face. "Yo, your boyfriend's back," Keisha said, nodding toward the waiting area. Tamia frowned, wiping her hands on a towel. "What you talking about?" "That dude from the other night. Burnt hand guy. He's out there asking for you." Her stomach did a weird flip, but she played it cool, tossing the towel into a bin. "He ain't my boyfriend. Probably just wants to complain about something." Keisha raised an eyebrow, sipping from her ever-present coffee cup. "Uh-huh. Sure. Go see what he wants before he starts throwing cash around to get your attention." Tamia rolled her eyes, but headed for the waiting area anyway, weaving through the crowd of coughing patients and tired families. Sure enough, there he was, Malcolm Reed, standing by the check-in desk, looking out of place in another sharp suit, this one dark gray and pristine. No burns this time, just that same nervous energy radiating off him. He held a sleek black gift bag in his good hand, the other still wrapped in the bandage she'd put on him. "Tamia," he said when he spotted her, his voice cutting through the low hum of the room. He stepped forward, holding out the bag like it was a peace offering. "I wanted to say thanks for the other night." She crossed her arms, eyeing the bag like it might bite her. "What's that?" "Just a little something. To show my appreciation." He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable under her stare. "I don't need your gifts, man," she said, keeping her tone flat. "I was just doing my job." "I know, but you were good at it. Better than good." He set the bag on the counter beside him, rubbing the back of his neck with his bandaged hand. "Look, I don't know how to do this. People stuff. But you helped me, and I don't take that lightly." She softened a little, just a crack, because there was something real in his voice, something that didn't match the fancy suit or the way he carried himself. "Fine, but I'm not opening that here. What's in it, anyway?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "A scarf. Cashmere. Thought it'd keep you warm on these cold nights." Tamia snorted, half amused, half annoyed. "You think I need a scarf? I got coats, bruh. You don't even know me." "I don't," he admitted, meeting her eyes. "But I'd like to." That threw her. She opened her mouth to snap back, but nothing came out. Before she could figure out what to say, the ER doors burst open behind her, paramedics wheeling in a stretcher. Shouts filled the air. Something about a seizure, vitals dropping fast. She spun around, instincts kicking in, but it wasn't just any patient. It was Jada. Tamia's heart stopped, her legs moving before her brain caught up. "Jada!" she yelled, shoving through the crowd to get to her sister. Jada's eyes were half open, her body limp against the stretcher, an oxygen mask strapped to her face. The paramedics rattled off stats. BP crashing, pulse weak. But it was all static to Tamia. She grabbed Jada's hand, cold and clammy, and squeezed hard. "Stay with me, baby girl," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're gonna be okay, doctor." Ellis was there in seconds, barking orders as they rushed Jada into a trauma bay. Tamia followed, her chest tight, her hands shaking as she helped hook up monitors and start an IV. She'd done this 100 times for strangers, but this was different. This was Jada, her Jada, the kid who'd taught herself to code on a busted library computer, who'd laughed through every dialysis session like it was no big deal. "She's seizing again," one of the medics shouted, and Tamia's world narrowed to the beep of the heart monitor. the jerk of Jada's body under the lights. She held her sister's shoulders, tears blurring her vision, until Dr. Ellis pushed her back. "Tamia, step out," the doctor said, firm but not unkind. "We've got her." "No, I'm staying," Tamia snapped. But Keisha was there, pulling her away, her grip strong on Tamia's arm. "Let them work, T," Keisha said, voice low. "You're too close." Tamia stumbled into the hall, her knees weak, her breath coming in gasps. She pressed her back against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor, hands covering her face. Jada couldn't leave her. Not now. Not after everything. She didn't hear the footsteps at first, didn't notice Malcolm until he crouched in front of her, his suit jacket brushing the dirty linoleum. He didn't say anything, just sat there, close but not touching, his gray eyes locked on her like he was afraid she'd break apart. "She's my sister," Tamia choked out, not sure why she was telling him. "She's all I got." "She's gonna make it," he said, quiet but certain, like he could will it into being. "You're strong. She's strong too." Tamia wiped her eyes, glaring at him through the tears. "You don't know that. You don't know us. I know you saved me the other night," he said, his voice steady. "And I know you're not giving up on her." She didn't have a comeback for that. They sat there in silence, the chaos of the ER swirling around them, until Dr. Ellis came out, pulling off her gloves. "She's stable," the doctor said, and Tamia's head snapped up. "For now. But we need to talk options. She's not doing good to Mia." Tamia nodded, hauling herself to her feet, her legs shaky but holding. She glanced at Malcolm, still crouched there, watching her with that same intensity. "Thanks," she muttered, barely audible, before following Dr. Ellis back inside. Malcolm stayed where he was, the gift bag forgotten on the counter, his bandaged hand flexing against his knee. He didn't know why he'd stayed, why he couldn't walk away. But something about Tamia Jackson, about the fire in her eyes even when she was falling apart, had hooked him deep. Hours later, Jada was moved to a room upstairs, hooked up to machines that beeped too loud in the quiet. Tamia sat by her bed, holding her sister's hand, the scarf Malcolm had brought draped over the chair beside her. She hadn't opened the bag yet, but she'd grabbed it on her way up, more out of habit than anything else. Jada stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Tamia?" "Right here," Tamia said, squeezing her hand. "You scared the hell out of me." "Sorry," Jada whispered, a weak smile tugging at her lips. "Did I miss anything good?" Tamia laughed, a shaky sound that felt more like relief than anything else. "Nah, just the usual. You good now?" "Yeah. Tired." Jada's eyes drifted to the scarf. "That's pretty. Where'd it come from?" "Some guy," Tamia said, brushing it off. "Don't worry about it." Jada smirked, even half asleep. "Some guy, huh? He cute?" "Go to sleep, nosy," Tamia shot back, but she couldn't hide the grin. Jada's laugh was soft, fading as she drifted off again. Tamia leaned back in the chair, staring at the scarf, soft, gray, way too fancy for her. She didn't know what to make of Malcolm Reed, didn't know why he'd stuck around when she'd fallen apart. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel so alone. Across the city, Malcolm sat in his penthouse, the lights of Chicago sprawling out below him like a map he couldn't read. His hand ached under the bandage, but it wasn't the pain keeping him up. It was her, Tamia, crying in that hallway, stronger than anyone he'd ever met. He didn't know what he was doing, didn't know how to be around someone like her. But he knew one thing. He wasn't letting go. The fluorescent lights in Mercy General's hallway buzzed overhead, casting a cold, flickering glow on Tamia Jackson as she slumped against the wall outside Jada's room. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her braids slipping loose from their bun, and her hands still trembled from the adrenaline crash. Jada was stable, for now, but the word hung heavy in her mind, fragile as a cracked glass. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to push back the exhaustion, the fear, the everything. The hospital smelled like bleach and desperation, and the faint hum of machines from Jada's room seeped through the door, a constant reminder of how close she'd come to losing her sister. "Tamia?" Keisha's voice cut through the haze, soft but insistent. She rounded the corner, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, a styrofoam cup of coffee in each hand. Her box braid swung as she stopped in front of Tamia, holding out one of the cups. "You look like you're about to pass out. Drink this." Tamia took it, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. "Thanks, Kay." She sipped, the coffee bitter and strong, grounding her a little. "Jada's okay, for now," Keisha nodded, leaning against the wall beside her. "I heard. Dr. Ellis said it was close. You holding up?" "Barely." Tamia let out a shaky laugh, staring at the steam curling up from her cup. "I thought I was going to lose her, Keish, right there in front of me." "You didn't. She's tough, just like her big sis." Keisha nudged her shoulder, a small smile tugging at her lips. "But you gotta stop trying to carry the world, T. You're 20, not Superwoman." "Tell that to the bills," Tamia muttered, taking another sip. "Or Jada's meds, or Ma's bad back." Keisha didn't argue, just sipped her own coffee, her eyes scanning the hall. "Speaking of carrying stuff, what's up with that dude, burnt hand guy? He was out there looking like a lost puppy when you were with Jada." Tamia's stomach flipped, unbidden, and she scowled to cover it. "Malcolm? He's just some rich dude who don't know how to act around regular people. Probably thinks he's doing me a favor by hanging around." "Uh-huh." Keisha's smirk was back, sharp and knowing. "He didn't look like he was doing you no favors. Looked like he was shook. You got him all twisted up, girl." "Whatever." Tamia waved her off, but her mind drifted back to the waiting area. Malcolm crouched in front of her, those gray eyes locked on hers, steady even when she was falling apart. She didn't get it. Why'd he stay? What did he want? Before Keisha could push, a nurse poked her head out of Jada's room. "Tamia, she's asking for you." Tamia straightened, shoving the coffee back at Keisha. "Duty calls." "Take care of yourself too, T," Keisha called after her, but Tamia was already through the door. Inside, Jada was propped up against the pillows, her face pale under the harsh lights, but her eyes were bright, flicking to Tamia the second she walked in. The IV line snaked from her arm to a bag hanging by the bed, and the heart monitor beeped steady, a small mercy. "Hey, Trouble," Tamia said, forcing a grin as she pulled the chair closer. "You trying to give me a heart attack?" Jada smirked, weak but real. "Gotta keep you on your toes." "Did I hear you yelling out there?" "Yeah, 'cause you scared the shit out of me." Tamia sat, reaching for Jada's hand. It was still cold, but stronger than it had been downstairs. "How you feeling now?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but better." Jada squeezed back, her fingers frail but stubborn. "Ma called. She's freaking out. Said she's coming soon." "Great. Just what I need." Her hovering. Tamia rolled her eyes, but the thought of Loretta rushing over in her old robe made her chest warm. "You're stuck with me till then, though." "Good." Jada's smile faded a little, her voice dropping. "Tamia, I'm sorry. I know this is my fault. Stop that." Tamia cut her off sharp. "None of this is your fault. You hear me? We're good. We've always been good." Jada nodded, but her eyes were glassy, and Tamia hated it. hated how her little sister carried guilt she didn't deserve. She leaned forward, brushing a braid off Jada's forehead. "Rest up, okay? I'm not going anywhere." The next afternoon, Tamia was back at the hospital, not for a shift, but to sit with Jada. She'd barely slept, crashing for a couple hours on the couch before Loretta dragged her up to eat some leftover mac and cheese. Now she sat cross-legged in the chair by Jada's bed, flipping through a dog-eared magazine she'd snagged from the waiting room. Jada was dozing, her breathing even, and the room was quiet except for the hum of the heater kicking on. A knock at the door made her jump, the magazine slipping to the floor. She looked up, and there he was, Malcolm Reed, standing in the doorway, looking as out of place as ever. His suit was navy this time, crisp and expensive, but his bandaged hand and the faint shadows under his eyes said he hadn't slept much either. He held a paper bag in his good hand, the kind from some bougie deli downtown. "Hey," he said, his voice low, like he was afraid of waking Jada. I didn't mean to barge in." Tamia stood, crossing her arms tight over her chest. "What you doing here, Malcolm?" He shifted, glancing at Jada, then back to her. "Heard your sister was still here. Thought I'd check in. Brought some food." He lifted the bag a little like it explained everything. She eyed it, then him, her guard up. "I told you I don't need your handouts." "It's not a handout," he said quick, stepping inside. "It's just sandwiches, turkey and Swiss. Figured you hadn't eaten." Her stomach growled right on cue, loud enough to make her wince. She hadn't eaten since that mac and cheese, and even then, it had been half a bowl. She glared at him, but the fight in her was slipping. "Fine, put it over there." She nodded at the table by the window. He did, setting the bag down careful, like he was handling something fragile. Then he turned back to her, hands shoved in his pockets. "How's she doing?" "Better. Stable." Tamia kept her voice clipped, watching him. "Why, you really here? You don't know us." Malcolm hesitated, his jaw working like he was chewing on the words. "I don't know. I just couldn't stop thinking about you. Last night, you were a mess, and I—" He stopped, running his good hand through his hair. "I've never seen anyone fight like that. For someone else." Tamia's throat tightened, but she didn't let it show. "Yeah, well, that's what you do for family. You wouldn't get it." "Maybe not," he said quiet. "But I want to." She didn't know what to say to that. The air between them felt charged, heavy, and she hated how it made her pulse kick up. Before she could figure it out, Jada's voice piped up from the bed, sleepy but sharp. "Is that the scarf guy?" Jada propped herself up, blinking at Malcolm. "He's taller than I thought." Tamia groaned, shooting her sister a look. "Jada, hush." Malcolm's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Scarf guy?" "Don't start," Tamia warned, but Jada was already grinning. "She said you gave her a scarf. Said you're some rich dude who don't know how to talk to people." "Jada!" Tamia snapped, heat creeping up her neck. Malcolm actually laughed, a low, rough sound that caught her off guard. "She's not wrong," he said, glancing at Tamia. "I'm not good at this, but I'm trying." Jada giggled, then winced, pressing a hand to her side. Tamia was at her side in a second, adjusting the pillows. "You okay?" "Yeah, just sore," Jada said, waving her off. "He can stay, though. He's funny." "Nobody asked you," Tamia muttered, but she didn't tell him to leave. Malcolm pulled up a chair on the other side of the bed, sitting awkward, like he wasn't sure he belonged there. Maybe he didn't, but he stayed anyway. They talked for a while. Small stuff, mostly Jada asking him about tech and coding, her eyes lighting up when he mentioned his company, Reed Innovations. Tamia stayed quiet, watching him answer her sister's questions with a patience she hadn't expected. He wasn't slick or charming, not like the guys she'd grown up around. He was clumsy, real, and it threw her off. When Loretta showed up an hour later, bustling in with a plastic bag of corner store snacks, she stopped short at the sight of Malcolm. Her eyes narrowed, flicking from him to Tamia. "Who's this?" Loretta asked, her voice sharp, protective. "Malcolm Reed," he said, standing quick, offering his good hand. "I met Tamia the other night. Just wanted to check on Jada." Loretta didn't take his hand, just stared him down, her lips pursed tight. "You the one who brought that scarf?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, dropping his hand when he realized she wasn't budging. "Humph." Loretta set her bag on the table, right over his sandwiches, and turned to Tamia. "What's he doing here, Tamia?" "He's just visiting, Ma," Tamia said, keeping her tone even. "It's fine." "Ain't nothing fine about some stranger sniffing around my girls," Loretta shot back, loud enough to make Jada snicker. "You got a job, boy?" "I own a company," Malcolm said, calm despite the heat in her glare. "Tech. Downtown." Loretta's eyebrows shot up, but she didn't soften. "Rich boy, huh? What you want with us?" "Ma, chill," Tamia cut in, stepping between them. "He's not here to start nothing." "I'm not," Malcolm said, meeting Loretta's eyes. Tamia helped me out. I wanted to return the favor." Loretta didn't say anything for a long beat, just sized him up like she could see right through him. Finally, she snorted, turning to Jada. "You hungry, baby?" "Yeah," Jada said, grinning. "Can we eat his sandwiches?" Tamia groaned, but Malcolm's laugh broke the tension, and even Loretta's mouth twitched a little. They ate together, turkey and Swiss for Jada and Malcolm, chips and a warm soda for Tamia and Loretta. It was weird, cramped, the four of them in that tiny hospital room, but it worked. For a minute, Tamia let herself relax, let the weight slip off her shoulders. Later, after Loretta took Jada for a quick walk down the hall to stretch her legs, Tamia walked Malcolm to the elevator. The hospital was quieter now, the afternoon lull settling in, and the hallway felt too small with just the two of them. "Thanks for the food," she said, leaning against the wall as he pressed the button. "And for sticking around last night. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said, simple, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. The elevator dinged, doors sliding open, but he didn't move. "Tamia, if there's anything I can do for Jada, for you, just say it." She bristled, her guard snapping back up. "We don't need your money, Malcolm. We've been handling it." "I know." He held up his good hand like a surrender. "Not money, just, I've got resources, doctors, tech, whatever. I want to help." She studied him, trying to read past the suit, the awkward way he stood there. "Why?" He exhaled, slow, his eyes dropping to the floor. "Because you didn't have to help me that night. But you did. And I haven't stopped thinking about it since." The elevator doors started to close, and he caught them with his bandaged hand, wincing a little. Tamia's chest tightened, but she didn't let it show. "I'll think about it," she said finally, "but don't hold your breath." "Fair enough." He stepped inside, flashing a small, crooked smile. "See you around, Tamia." The doors shut, and she stood there, staring at the scratched-up metal, her heart thudding too loud in her ears. She didn't know what to make of him, didn't know why he kept coming back, why she didn't tell him to get lost. But something about Malcolm Reed stuck with her, like a splinter she couldn't pull out. Back in Jada's room, Loretta was unpacking the snacks, muttering under her breath about fancy boys with too much time. Tamia sank into the chair, grabbing a chip from the bag. "He's trouble, Tamia," Loretta said, not looking up. "You watch yourself." "He's just a guy, Ma," Tamia lied, popping the chip in her mouth. But she wasn't so sure. Malcolm Reed wasn't just anything. Not to her, not anymore. Across town, Malcolm climbed into his sleek black Audi, the engine purring as he pulled out of the hospital lot. The city stretched out ahead, all steel and glass and noise, but his mind was back in that cramped room, Jada's laugh, Loretta's glare, Tamia's fire. He didn't know what he was doing, didn't know how to be around someone who didn't need him the way everyone else did. But he knew one thing: he wasn't walking away. The late afternoon sun dipped low over Chicago, painting the south side in shades of orange and gray as Tamia Jackson sat by Jada's hospital bed, flipping through her phone. Mercy General's fifth floor was quieter than the ER, the chaos muted to a steady hum of footsteps and murmured voices in the hall. Jada was asleep again, her chest rising and falling under the thin hospital blanket, the IV line a constant tether to the machines keeping her steady. Tamia's thumb hovered over a text from Keisha. "Girl, you still alive up there?" But she didn't reply. Her head was too full, buzzing with Jada's close call, Loretta's warnings, and Malcolm Reed's damn face popping up every time she closed her eyes. She tossed the phone onto the table, next to the half-eaten bag of chips Loretta had left behind. The scarf Malcolm brought was still there too, folded neat on the chair, its soft gray fabric catching the light. She hadn't touched it since he'd left, but Jada kept eyeing it like it was some kind of treasure. Tamia didn't get why he'd picked something so fancy. Cashmere, he'd said. Like that meant anything to her. She'd grown up with hand-me-down coats and dollar store gloves. What was she supposed to do with a scarf like that? The door creaked open, and Loretta shuffled in, her old sneakers scuffing the floor. She carried a styrofoam cup of tea from the cafeteria, steam curling up in the chilly room. Her eyes landed on Tamia, sharp and searching, before flicking to the scarf. "He gone?" Loretta asked, setting the tea down and sinking into the other chair. "Yeah, Ma. Took off a while ago." Tamia kept her voice casual, picking at a loose thread on her scrubs. "Good." Loretta sipped her tea, the sound loud in the quiet. "Don't need no rich boy hanging around stirring up trouble." "He's not stirring nothing," Tamia said, sharper than she meant. "He brought food. Checked on Jada. That's it." Loretta's eyebrows shot up, her lips pursing tight. "That's how it starts, Tamia. Next thing you know, he's throwing money at us, thinking he can buy his way in. I seen it before." Tamia's jaw clenched, but she didn't bite back. Loretta's before was a sore spot. Some dude from years ago, a white guy with a slick smile and empty promises, who'd left her high and dry when Tamia was still in diapers. It had hardened her mom, made her see every outsider as a threat. Tamia got it, but Malcolm didn't feel like that guy. Not yet, anyway. "He's not like that, Ma," she said finally, softer. "He's just weird. Doesn't know how to talk to people." Loretta didn't look convinced, but she dropped it, turning her attention to Jada. "She wake up at all?" "Yeah, for a bit." Asked about the scarf. Tamia smirked, nodding at it. "Thinks he's some kind of mystery man." Loretta snorted, a grudging smile tugging at her mouth. "She's too nosy for her own good. Always has been." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that felt heavy but familiar. Tamia's phone buzzed. Keisha again, probably, but she ignored it. Her mind drifted back to Malcolm in the hall, his offer hanging between them like a live wire. Resources, he'd said. Doctors, tech, whatever. She didn't want his help, didn't want to owe anybody anything, but Jada's pale face kept flashing in her head. What if he could do something she couldn't? The next morning, Tamia was back at work, her shift starting just as the sun crept over the city. She'd barely slept, crashing for a few hours on the couch while Loretta kept watch at the hospital. Her eyes burned, and her legs felt like lead, but she pushed through, clocking in and grabbing a clipboard from the nurse's station. The ER was already hopping. Car accident victims, a guy with a busted nose from a bar fight, the usual chaos. She was halfway through stitching up a kid's knee when Keisha slid up beside her, her grin too big for 7 a.m. "Guess who's back, T?" Tamia didn't look up, focusing on the needle in her hand. "If you say Malcolm, I'm gonna smack you." Too late. Keisha leaned in, voice low. "He's out there, talking to Dr. Ellis. Looks all serious, too." Tamia's stomach flipped, her needle pausing mid-stitch. "What's he want now?" "Dunno, but he's got a fancy briefcase this time. Maybe he's here to propose." Keisha waggled her eyebrows, dodging the elbow Tamia threw her way. "Shut up," Tamia muttered, finishing the stitch and taping a bandage over it. She handed the kid off to his mom and stood, wiping her hands on her scrubs. "He's probably just lost or something." "Yeah, right," Keisha smirked, following her as she headed for the waiting area. "Man's got a crush, T. You better watch out." Tamia ignored her, weaving through the bustle until she spotted him, Malcolm Reed, standing by the check-in desk, his navy suit swapped for a dark sweater and slacks that still screamed money. He held a leather briefcase, his bandaged hand resting on top, and Dr. Ellis was next to him, flipping through some papers he'd handed her. His face was tight, focused, nothing like the awkward guy from yesterday. "Tamia," he said when he saw her straightening up. Ellis glanced over, nodded, and walked off, leaving them alone in the crowded room. "What's this about?" Tamia asked, crossing her arms. "You stalking me now?" "No," he said quick, then winced, like he'd heard how dumb that sounded. "I mean, I wanted to talk to Dr. Ellis about Jada." Her guard shot up, sharp and fast. "What about Jada?" He shifted, setting the briefcase on the counter. "I've got contacts, specialists, research labs. I asked Dr. Ellis if there's anything they're missing. New treatments, trials, whatever might help." Tamia stared at him, her heart thudding hard. "You did what?" "I didn't push," he said, hands up like he was calming a wild animal. "Just asked. She said Jada's on the transplant list, but it's slow. I've got a team that can speed things up. Private labs, priority access, if you want it." Her mouth went dry, anger and hope tangling up in her chest. "I told you we don't need your money." "It's not money," he cut in, voice firm for the first time. "It's time. Jada doesn't have a lot of it, right? I can get her what she needs faster than the system can." She wanted to snap at him, tell him to back off, but the words stuck. He wasn't wrong. Jada's clock was ticking, and the transplant list was a crapshoot. She'd seen patients wait years, die waiting. The thought of Jada fading away while she stood here arguing made her sick. "Why you doing this?" she asked, quieter, searching his face. "You don't even know her." Malcolm exhaled, his gray eyes steady on hers. "Because you saved me that night. Not just my hand. You didn't treat me like some untouchable asshole. I've got all this stuff, money, tech, people, and it's never meant anything. Until now." Tamia's throat tightened, her arms dropping to her sides. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to handle this guy who kept showing up, offering things she couldn't refuse but didn't want to take. Before she could figure it out, Keisha's voice broke in, loud and teasing from across the room. "Yo, T, your man's making moves," she called, grinning as heads turned. "Keisha, I swear." Tamia started, but Malcolm's laugh cut her off, low and rough, easing the tension in her shoulders. "She's not wrong," he said, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "I'm trying, at least." Tamia shook her head, fighting a grin of her own. "You're a mess, you know that?" "Yeah. Been told." He picked up the briefcase, stepping back. "Think about it, Tamia. No pressure. I'll be around." He turned to go, but she stopped him, the words slipping out before she could catch them. "Wait." He paused, looking back, and she crossed the space between them, lowering her voice. "If you're serious, talk to me first next time, not Dr. Ellis. This is my family." "Deal," he said, nodding. "You call the shots." She watched him walk out, the ER doors swinging shut behind him, and leaned against the counter, her head spinning. Keisha sauntered over, still smirking. "Told you," she said, nudging her. "Man's whipped." "Shut up," Tamia muttered. But she couldn't shake the feeling, the spark of something she didn't want to name. That night, Tamia sat in Jada's room, the lights dim, the city glowing through the window. Jada was awake, tapping at her laptop, her fingers slow but steady. Loretta had gone home to shower, leaving them alone, and the quiet felt thick, heavy with everything Tamia wasn't saying. "Malcolm came by work today," she said, finally breaking the silence. Jada's head popped up, eyes bright. "Scarf guy? What did he want?" "He's trying to help. With you." Tamia picked at her nails, avoiding Jada's stare. "Says he can get you better doctors, faster stuff." Jada set the laptop down, her face serious. "You gonna let him?" "I don't know." Tamia sighed, leaning back in the chair. "Ma hates him, thinks he's trouble, and I don't like owing people." "He doesn't seem like trouble," Jada said, shrugging. "He's weird, but nice, and if he can help, why not?" Tamia didn't answer, just stared at the scarf still sitting there, untouched. Jada had a point, too much of one. But letting Malcolm in meant letting go of something, control maybe, and that scared her more than she'd admit. The next day, Tamia was off shift, crashing at home on the couch when her phone buzzed. She groaned, rolling over to grab it, expecting Keisha or Loretta. Instead, it was a number she didn't know, with a text that made her sit up fast. "Tamia, it's Malcolm. Dr. Ellis called. They found a specialist in New York, top guy for kidney stuff. He's willing to look at Jada's case. Can we talk?" She stared at the screen, her heart pounding. New York, a specialist. It was real, too real, and she didn't know if she was ready for it. She typed back slow, fingers shaky. "Yeah, meet me at the hospital tomorrow, 3 p.m. She hit send, tossing the phone aside, and buried her face in the cushion. Loretta's voice echoed in her head. "Watch yourself." But Jada's smile drowned it out. She didn't know what she was doing, didn't know where this was going, but she couldn't say no. Not for Jada. Across town, Malcolm sat in his penthouse office, the city sprawling dark and restless below. His phone glowed with Tamia's reply, and he let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He didn't know why this mattered so much, why she mattered. But it did. He'd spent years building walls, keeping people out, but Tamia Jackson had slipped through without even trying. And now, he was in deep. He leaned back, flexing his bandaged hand, the ache a dull reminder of that first night. Tomorrow, he'd see her again. Tomorrow, he'd try to prove he wasn't just some rich boy playing hero. Tomorrow, everything could change. The clock on the wall of Mercy General's cafeteria ticked past 2:50 p.m., and Tamia Jackson sat at a corner table, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee she'd barely touched. The place smelled like burnt fries and disinfectant, a mix that churned her stomach. But she stayed put, her leg bouncing under the table. Her braids were loose today, spilling over her shoulders, and her hoodie, Jada's old one, faded with a cracked Bulls logo, felt too thin against the draft sneaking through the windows. She'd told Malcolm 3 p.m., and now she was counting down the minutes, her phone buzzing in her pocket with a text from Keisha. She didn't bother to check. Outside, Chicago was gray and restless. the wind rattling the glass, whipping leaves and trash across the parking lot. Tamia stared at the swirl of cream in her coffee, her mind a tangle of Jada's pale face, Loretta's warnings, and Malcolm's text from last night. A specialist in New York. Top guy. It sounded too good, too big, and she hated how much she wanted it to be real, hated how much she was starting to lean on this guy she barely knew. The cafeteria doors swung open, and there he was, Malcolm Reed, right on time, cutting through the scattered nurses and visitors like he didn't belong. His dark sweater clung to his broad shoulders, his slacks crisp despite the mess of the city outside, and that damn briefcase was back in his good hand. His bandaged one hung stiff at his side, a reminder of that first night that felt like a lifetime ago. He spotted her, his gray eyes locking on hers, and something in her chest kicked hard. "Hey," he said, sliding into the seat across from her, setting the briefcase down. His voice was low, careful, like he was stepping around broken glass. "Hey," she shot back, keeping her tone flat, her arms crossed tight over her chest. "You're punctual. Guess that's a rich boy thing." He smirked, just a flicker, and leaned back a little. "Guess so. You good?" "Been better?" She tapped her fingers on the table, avoiding his gaze. "What's this about New York?" Malcolm opened the briefcase, pulling out a thin stack of papers, his movements slow like he didn't want to spook her. "Dr. Ellis gave me the green light to reach out. Guy's name is Dr. Patel, best in the country for kidney transplants. He's got a private clinic, runs trials for new treatments. I sent him Jada's file this morning. He's interested." Tamia's breath caught, but she kept her face steady, reaching for the papers. She skimmed the top sheet. Medical jargon, stats, a bio with a photo of a sharp-eyed man in a white coat. "Interested how?" "He wants to see her. Soon as possible." Malcolm's voice was firm now, no hesitation. "He thinks she's a candidate for a new procedure, less invasive, faster recovery. Could buy her time till a transplant comes through." She set the papers down, her hands flat on the table to stop them shaking. "And you just made this happen? Overnight?" "I've got people," he said, shrugging like it was nothing. "Called in a favor, that's all." "That's all," she echoed, a bitter laugh slipping out. "You don't get it, do you? This ain't normal for me. Specialists, favors, my world don't work like that." "I know." He leaned forward, his eyes steady on hers. "But it can, for Jada." She wanted to argue, wanted to shove it all back in his face, but the words wouldn't come. Jada's weak smile flashed in her head, her sister's voice asking, "Why not?" the night before. Tamia swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "What's the catch?" "No catch," he said quick, then paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, you'd have to go to New York. I'd cover it, travel, stay, all of it. But you'd be there with her." "New York," she repeated, the weight of it sinking in, leaving Chicago, leaving Loretta, leaving her job. "And what? I just drop everything?" "Not forever. A week, maybe 2. He flexed his bandaged hand, wincing a little. "I'd go with you. Make sure it's smooth." She stared at him, her pulse thudding loud in her ears. "You'd go? Why?" "Because I said I'd help," he said, simple, like it was obvious. "And because I don't trust anyone else to get it right." Tamia didn't know what to say, her mind racing. It was too much, too fast, and she hated how it made her feel, like she was losing control. She pushed the papers back toward him, standing abrupt. "I need to think. I'll call you." "Tamia," he started, but she was already moving, grabbing her coffee and heading for the door, her heart pounding too hard to stay still. Back in Jada's room, Tamia paced, the papers Malcolm had given her burning a hole in her hoodie pocket. Jada was awake, propped up with her laptop, tapping away at some coding project. Loretta sat in the corner, knitting a lumpy scarf. Ironic, Tamia thought, given the one Malcolm had brought. And the room felt too small, the air too thick. "You're pacing like a caged cat," Loretta said, not looking up from her needles. "What's eating you?" Tamia stopped, running a hand over her braids. "Malcolm came by. He's got a doctor in New York who can help Jada. Big shot, new treatment." Loretta's needles froze, her eyes snapping up. "New York? And who's paying for that?" "He is," Tamia said, bracing herself. "Says he'll cover it all. Wants me to go with her." Loretta's face hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I knew it. That boy's trying to buy you, Tamia. Get you out there, away from us, and then what?" "Ma, it's not like that," Tamia snapped, her voice rising. "It's for Jada. You think I'd let him pull some shit if it wasn't?" "Don't you cuss at me," Loretta shot back, dropping the knitting into her lap. "I've seen men like him. Flash some cash, make promises, then leave you broke and crying. You're too young to see it." "I'm not a kid." Tamia's hands balled into fists, her chest tight. "Jada's dying, Ma. You want me to sit here and wait for it?" The room went dead quiet, the words hanging heavy. Jada's typing stopped, her wide eyes flicking between them. Loretta's face crumpled just for a second before she pulled it back together. "Don't you say that," she whispered, voice shaking. "Don't you ever." Tamia's throat burned, tears pricking her eyes, but she didn't back down. "It's true. And if he can help, if there's even a chance, I'm taking it." Loretta didn't answer, just stared at her, the silence stretching thin. Jada broke it, her voice small but firm. "I want to go," she said, setting the laptop aside. "If it's a shot, I'll take it. I'm tired of being stuck here." Tamia turned to her, relief and fear crashing together. "You sure?" "Yeah." Jada nodded, a spark in her eyes Tamia hadn't seen in weeks. "And Scarf Guy's cool. He's not going to screw us over." Loretta snorted, but it was weaker now, her fight fading. "You two are going to be the death of me." Tamia crossed to Jada, squeezing her shoulder. "We're doing this, Ma. For her." Loretta didn't agree, didn't argue, just picked up her knitting again, her needles clicking fast. Tamia pulled out her phone, typing a quick text to Malcolm before she could second-guess it. "We're in. When do we leave?" 2 days later, Tamia stood in the hospital parking lot, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, Jada beside her in a wheelchair. Loretta hovered behind, her arms crossed tight, her face a mask of worry and resignation. The sky was heavy with clouds, the wind sharp off Lake Michigan, and Tamia's stomach churned as a sleek black SUV pulled up, Malcolm stepping out. He looked nervous, more than usual, his good hand tugging at the hem of his sweater. "Hey," he said, nodding at them. "Car's ready. Plane's waiting at O'Hare." "Plane?" Loretta's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "What kind of plane?" "Private," Malcolm said, wincing at her glare. "It's faster, safer for Jada." Loretta's mouth opened, then shut, her eyes narrowing. Tamia stepped in quick. "Ma, it's fine. We'll call you when we land." "You better," Loretta said, pulling Tamia into a rough hug, then Jada. "Both of you." Malcolm helped Jada into the SUV, careful not to jostle her, while Tamia tossed her bag in the back. She slid in beside her sister, Malcolm taking the seat across, and the driver, a quiet guy in a dark cap, pulled out smooth, the hospital shrinking in the rear view. "You good?" Malcolm asked, his voice low, his eyes on Tamia. "Yeah," she lied, staring out the window as Chicago blurred by. Jada leaned against her, already dozing, and Tamia's hand found hers, holding tight. The private jet was a shock. Leather seats, a mini fridge, space enough to stretch out. Jada's eyes lit up despite her exhaustion, and even Tamia couldn't hide a small grin as they settled in. Malcolm sat across from them, flipping through a tablet, explaining the plan. Dr. Patel, the clinic, a week in New York. His voice was steady, but his hands fidgeted, betraying him. Halfway through the flight, Jada nodded off, her head on Tamia's shoulder. The cabin was quiet, just the hum of the engines, and Tamia glanced at Malcolm, catching him watching her. "What?" she asked, keeping her voice low. "Nothing," he said quick, then shook his head. "Just, you're different up here, less guarded." She smirked, leaning back. "Don't get used to it. This ain't my world." "Could be," he said, soft, and the air shifted, heavy with something unspoken. She didn't answer, just looked out the window at the clouds rolling by, her heart thudding too loud. New York loomed ahead, and with it, a chance. For Jada. For them. For something she wasn't ready to name. They landed at a private airstrip outside the city, the skyline jagged and bright against the dusk. A car took them to a sleek hotel near the clinic, Jada crashing in a room with a nurse Malcolm had arranged. Tamia stood in her own room, staring at the view, towers of glass and steel, so far from Southside's cracked streets, and felt the weight of it all crash down. A knock pulled her out of it. She opened the door, and Malcolm stood there, hands in his pockets, his face tense. "Jada's set," he said. "Patel's coming tomorrow. You need anything?" She shook her head, stepping aside to let him in. "I'm good. Just, this is a lot." "I know." He stayed by the door, awkward, like he didn't know where to put himself. "I'm not trying to take over. Just want it to work." She studied him, the lines of his face, the way he held himself, strong but shaky, like he was waiting for her to push him away. "Why you care so much?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. He exhaled, slow, his eyes dropping to the floor. "Because you make me feel something. For the first time in years, and I don't know what to do with it." Tamia's breath hitched, her guard slipping. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat off him, and the room shrank, the city fading outside. "Malcolm." Before she could finish, her phone buzzed loud, shattering the moment. She pulled it out. Loretta, probably freaking out. She sighed, stepping back. "I gotta take this." "Yeah," he said, nodding, his voice rough. "I'll see you tomorrow." He left, the door clicking shut, and Tamia answered the call, Loretta's voice filling the silence. But her mind was still on him, on that almost, on the pull she couldn't shake. The New York skyline glittered outside the hotel window, a mess of lights cutting through the dark like a jagged promise, but Tamia Jackson barely noticed. She stood in the middle of her room, phone pressed to her ear, Loretta's voice crackling through the line with that mix of worry and grit she'd known her whole life. The plush carpet felt foreign under her sneakers, the air too clean, too quiet compared to the South Side's constant hum. Her duffel bag sat unzipped on the bed, Jada's Bulls hoodie spilling out, a lifeline to home in this sterile, fancy-ass place. "Tamia, you there?" Loretta's voice snapped her back, sharp and impatient. "You ain't said a word in 2 minutes." "Yeah, Ma, I'm here," Tamia said, rubbing her temple with her free hand. "Just tired. Long day." "Long day don't explain why you sound like you're halfway to losing it," Loretta shot back. "That boy got you twisted up already?" Tamia's jaw tightened, Malcolm's face flashing in her mind. Those gray eyes, that almost moment before the call. "He's fine, Ma. Jada's good. Nurse is with her. We see the doctor tomorrow." Loretta's grunt was pure skepticism. "You watch him, Tamia. Rich folks don't do nothing for free. He's got an angle." He's not— Tamia stopped, swallowing the defense she wasn't ready to voice. I got it under control. How you holding up? Me? Loretta snorted, the sound rough through the phone. I'm pacing this damn apartment like a fool, that's how. You two better come back in one piece. We will, Tamia said, softer now. Promise. They talked a little more. Loretta grumbling about the neighbors, Tamia dodging questions about Malcolm, until her mom finally hung up, leaving her alone with the hum of the hotel's AC. She tossed the phone onto the bed, sinking down beside it, her hands digging into her braids. Malcolm's words echoed in her head. You make me feel something. And her chest ached with it, a pull she didn't want but couldn't shake. She wasn't supposed to feel this, not for some tech bro who didn't know her world. But here she was, stuck in his orbit, and Jada's life hanging on the line didn't make it any easier. A soft knock pulled her out of it. She hauled herself up, expecting the nurse checking in. But it was Malcolm again, leaning against the doorframe, his sweater sleeves pushed up to his elbows. His bandaged hand flexed, like he was testing it, and his eyes flicked over her face, searching. Thought you were gone, she said, stepping back to let him in, her voice steadier than she felt. Was gonna, he said, shutting the door behind him. But I figured you might need to yell at me or something. She smirked, crossing her arms. Tempting. What's up? He hesitated, shoving his good hand in his pocket. Jada's set for tomorrow, 9 a.m. with Patel. I just wanted to make sure you're okay with this. All of it. Tamia studied him, the way he stood there, awkward but solid, like he'd plant himself wherever she needed him. I'm not okay with any of it, she said finally, honest. But Jada needs this, so I'm here. He nodded slow, like he got it. I know it's a lot. I'm not trying to push you. You are, though, she said, sharper now, stepping closer. You keep showing up, throwing all this at me. Planes, doctors, hotels. I didn't ask for it, Malcolm. I know. His voice dropped, rough around the edges. I don't know how to do this halfway. I see something I can fix. I fix it. But you— He stopped, exhaling hard. You're not something to fix. I get that now. Her breath caught, the air between them shrinking. She wanted to push back, tell him to get out, but her feet wouldn't move. Then what am I? She asked, quieter, her eyes locked on his. He stepped closer, close enough she could smell the faint cedar off his sweater, feel the heat rolling off him. You're the first person who's ever made me want to try, he said, his voice low, raw. Not just help. Try. Tamia's heart slammed against her ribs, her guard cracking wide open. She didn't think, didn't let herself, just moved, closing the gap, her hands grabbing his sweater as she kissed him. It was fast, messy, her lips crashing into his, and for a second he froze, stiff under her grip. Then he melted, his good hand sliding to her waist, pulling her in, his mouth moving against hers like he'd been starving for it. She broke away first, breathing hard, her hands still tangled in his sweater. His eyes were wide, dazed, his chest heaving like he'd run a mile. Shit, she muttered, stepping back, her face burning. I didn't mean— Don't, he cut in, his voice rough, reaching for her again. Don't say that. She let him pull her back, let his hands frame her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. This time the kiss was slower, deeper, and she felt it everywhere. His fingers trembling against her skin, his breath hitching when she pressed closer. Her hand slid up his chest, under his sweater, and he flinched, a sharp intake of air, but didn't pull away. His skin was warm, alive under her touch, and it hit her. He'd never done this, never let anyone this close. Malcolm, she whispered against his lips, pulling back just enough to see him. "You okay?" "Yeah," he breathed, his forehead resting against hers. "Never been better." She laughed, soft and shaky, her hands slipping down to his arms. "You're shaking." "You're shaking me," he said, a small crooked smile breaking through. This is—" "First time?" she guessed, gentle, and he nodded, his face flushing red under the dim light. "Doesn't feel like it should be," he murmured, his thumb tracing her jaw. "Not with you." Her chest tightened, something soft and dangerous blooming there, but she didn't pull away. They stood like that, tangled up, the city buzzing outside, until her phone buzzed again, loud and insistent on the bed. She groaned, stepping out of his grip to grab it. Keisha this time, a string of texts about some ER drama she didn't care about right now. "I should go," Malcolm said, his voice still rough, adjusting his sweater like he needed something to do with his hands. "Big day tomorrow." "Yeah," she agreed, but neither of them moved, the pull still thick between them. Finally, he crossed to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "Tamia," he said, looking back. "I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to." She nodded, her throat too tight to speak, and he left, the door clicking shut soft behind him. She sank onto the bed, her lips tingling, her head spinning. What the hell was she doing? The next morning, Tamia stood in Dr. Patel's clinic, a sleek, modern space that smelled like money and hope. Jada sat on the exam table, her legs swinging, a little color back in her cheeks from the flight's rest. Malcolm hovered by the door, his briefcase swapped for a nervous energy, his eyes flicking to Tamia every few seconds like he was checking she was still there. Dr. Patel was short, sharp, all business in his white coat, his accent clipped as he flipped through Jada's chart. "She's a good candidate," he said, peering over his glasses at them. "The procedure's experimental, minimally invasive, boosts kidney function short-term, could stabilize her for months, maybe a year." Tamia's heart leapt, but she kept her voice steady. "What's the risk?" "Low," Patel said, setting the chart down. "Infection, mostly. We've done it on 20 patients, 18 successes so far." 18 out of 20 ain't bad, Jada piped up, grinning at Tamia. "I like those odds." Tamia forced a smile, her hand squeezing Jada's shoulder. "Yeah, me too." Malcolm stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "When can you do it?" "Tomorrow," Patel said, tapping his pen on the desk. "We'll prep her tonight, run some tests. She'll be in and out by noon." Tamia nodded, her mind racing but her face still. "Okay, let's do it." Patel left to set things up, and Jada hopped off the table, wobbling a little until Tamia steadied her. "I'm gonna be a badass with robot kidneys," she said, grinning, and Tamia laughed despite the knot in her gut. Malcolm caught her eye as Jada chattered, a silent question in his look. She nodded, just a tilt of her head, and he relaxed, a small smile breaking through. They were in this together now, whether she liked it or not. That night, Tamia couldn't sleep. Jada was in the clinic, prepped and resting, and the hotel room felt too big, too empty. She paced, her sneakers silent on the carpet, until a knock stopped her cold. Malcolm again, his hair messy, his sweater swapped for a plain tee that hugged his frame. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked, letting him in, her voice rough from exhaustion. "Nope." He shut the door, leaning against it. "You?" "Too wired." She sank onto the bed, patting the spot beside her. He sat, close but not touching, the space between them electric. "Tomorrow's gonna work," he said, quiet, like he needed to hear it too. "She's strong." "Yeah," Tamia agreed, her eyes on her hands. "She is." He shifted, his knee brushing hers, and she didn't pull away. "Tamia," he started, his voice low. "Last night." "Don't," she cut in, soft but firm, turning to face him. "Not tonight. Just stay." He nodded, understanding, and they sat there, side by side, the city humming outside. Eventually she leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, his arm sliding around her slow, careful. They didn't talk, didn't kiss, just held on, the weight of tomorrow pressing down but lighter with him there. The procedure went smooth, Jada out by noon, groggy but grinning, her vitals steady. Tamia sat by her bed, relief crashing over her like a wave, while Malcolm hovered, his quiet presence a anchor she didn't expect to need. Dr. Patel called it a success, and for the first time in months, Tamia let herself hope. Back at the hotel that night, Jada asleep in her room, Tamia found Malcolm on the balcony, staring at the city. She stepped out, the cold biting her skin, and slid her arms around him from behind, her cheek against his back. "Thank you," she whispered, the words heavy with everything she couldn't say. He turned, pulling her close, his hands steady now, no tremble. "Anything for you," he said, and kissed her, slow, deep, a promise in it she felt down to her bones. They stumbled back inside, the kiss turning hungry, her hands tugging his shirt off, his fingers fumbling with her hoodie. It was messy, real, their breaths loud in the quiet. And when they fell onto the bed, it wasn't just heat. It was trust, raw and new, stitching them together in ways neither could undo. The hotel room was still. The only sound, the faint hum of New York's traffic filtering through the balcony doors, as Tamia Jackson lay tangled in the sheets, her breath slowing against Malcolm Reed's chest. The city lights painted streaks across the ceiling, soft and restless, and her skin still buzzed where his hands had been. Steady now, no tremble, like he'd found something in her he'd been chasing his whole life. She shifted, her bare leg brushing his, and he tightened his arm around her, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her shoulder. It was late, past midnight, and Jada was safe in her own room down the hall, the procedure a quiet victory humming in the back of Tamia's mind. "You awake?" she murmured, her voice rough, her cheek pressed to his heartbeat. "Yeah," Malcolm said, low and warm, his breath stirring her braids. "You?" "Barely." She tilted her head, catching his gray eyes in the dim light. They were soft, unguarded, a far cry from the guy who'd flinched at her touch in that ER weeks ago. "You good?" He smiled, small and real, his hand sliding to her neck. "Better than good. You?" She nodded, her lips curving despite the weight still pressing on her chest. Jada was okay, better than okay. And Malcolm was here, solid under her hands, his warmth sinking into her bones. But something gnawed at her, a shadow she couldn't shake. This, him, New York, the way her life was spinning out of control. It wasn't hers, not really. She was a South Side girl, scrappy and broke, not some jet-set chick sleeping with a billionaire. What happened when they went back? "Stop thinking," he said, his thumb brushing her jaw, reading her too easy. "Can't," she admitted, sitting up a little, the sheet slipping down her shoulder. Us, it's a lot, Malcolm." "I know." He sat up too, leaning against the headboard, his bare chest catching the light. "But it's real, isn't it?" She didn't answer right away, just looked at him. Messy hair, flushed skin, the bandage on his hand peeling at the edges. Real. Yeah, it was. Too real, maybe. She leaned in, kissing him slow, letting it linger until her head stopped spinning. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark, locked on hers. "Real don't mean easy," she said finally, her voice steady. "We gotta figure this out." "We will," he said, pulling her back down, his lips brushing her forehead. "Together." She let it go for now, curling into him, sleep tugging at her edges. Tomorrow could wait. The next morning, Tamia woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains. Malcolm gone, but a note on the pillow. "Getting coffee. Back soon." She stretched, her body sore in a good way, and grabbed her phone off the nightstand. A text from Loretta blinked up. "Call me when you up. Jada, okay?" And she smiled, typing a quick reply before heading to check on her sister. Jada was awake, sitting up in bed with her laptop, a tray of half-eaten pancakes beside her. The nurse, a quiet woman named Carla, nodded at Tamia from the corner, slipping out to give them space. "Morning, badass," Tamia said, dropping into the chair by the bed. "How's the robot kidney?" "Working," Jada grinned, tapping her side. "Feel like I could run a mile, maybe 2. "Don't push it," Tamia warned, but her chest loosened, seeing Jada's color back, her spark alive. "You scared me good this time." "I know." Jada's grin faded, her eyes dropping to the laptop. "But it's worth it, right? This whole crazy trip?" "Yeah," Tamia said, squeezing her hand. "Worth it." The door opened, Malcolm stepping in with 2 coffees and a bag of bagels, his sweater swapped for a hoodie that made him look less like a billionaire and more like a regular guy. "Morning," he said, setting the stuff on the table. "How's the patient?" "Ready to kick ass," Jada said, snagging a bagel. "You sticking around, scarf guy?" "Long as you'll have me," he shot back, glancing at Tamia with a small smile. She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her own grin, grabbing a coffee. They ate together, Jada chattering about some coding idea she'd dreamed up, Malcolm nodding along, Tamia watching them both. It felt good. Too good. And that shadow crept back, whispering doubts she didn't want to hear. Later that day, they were packing up. Jada cleared to fly back to Chicago tomorrow. Tamia was folding clothes in her room when her phone rang. Unknown number, but she picked up anyway, figuring it was the clinic. "Hello?" she said, tucking it against her shoulder as she stuffed Jada's hoodie into the duffel. "Tamia Jackson?" The voice was deep, older, with a faint rasp. "This is Roland Reed." She froze, the hoodie slipping from her hands. "Who?" "Roland Reed," he repeated slower. "Malcolm's father." Her stomach dropped, her mind racing to catch up. Malcolm never talked about his dad, barely mentioned his mom either, just that she died when he was a kid. Okay, she said, sinking onto the bed. "What's this about?" "I need to see him," Roland said, his voice tight. "I saw the news, him in New York with you and your sister. I know he's helping her. I need to talk to him." Tamia's grip tightened on the phone, her pulse kicking up. "Why you calling me?" "He's got a phone." "He won't take my calls," Roland admitted, a bitter edge cutting through. "Been years. But he listens to you. Please." She didn't know what to say, her head spinning. "I don't even know you, man. Why should I?" "Because I'm dying," he said, blunt, and the words hit like a punch. "Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. I don't want anything from him. Just a chance to say I'm sorry." Tamia's breath caught, her free hand curling into a fist. She didn't owe this guy shit. But the rawness in his voice, the same rawness she'd heard in Malcolm that first night, stopped her cold. "Where you at?" she asked finally. "Chicago," he said. "I'll come to you, wherever he is." She exhaled hard, her mind screaming no, but her gut saying something else. "Fine. We're back tomorrow. I'll tell him. But it's his call, not mine. Thank you, Roland said, relief thick in his tone. You don't know what this means. Yeah, I do, she muttered, hanging up before he could say more. She tossed the phone aside, her hands shaking, and stared at the wall. Malcolm's dad, dying. What the hell was she supposed to do with that? Malcolm came back an hour later, finding her still on the bed, the duffel half packed. He stopped short, his coffee cup pausing halfway to his mouth. What's wrong? She looked up, her throat tight. Your dad called. His face went blank, then hard, the cup hitting the table with a dull thud. What? Roland, she said, watching him close. Says he's dying. Wants to see you. Malcolm didn't move, didn't blink. His jaw locked tight. He's lying, he said finally, his voice flat. He's always lying. He didn't sound like it, she said, standing, crossing to him. Said he's got cancer, 6 months. He laughed, a harsh, broken sound, turning away to stare out the window. 6 months too late. He left me when I was 15, Tamia. After my mom died. Didn't even show up to the funeral. Her chest ached, but she didn't back off, stepping closer. I get it. He's an asshole, but he's your asshole. And he's dying. So what? He spun back, his eyes blazing. I don't owe him shit. He doesn't get to waltz back in because he's out of time. No, he doesn't, she agreed, her voice steady. But you get to decide what happens next, not him. He stared at her, his breath ragged, and she saw it. The crack in his walls, the hurt he'd buried deep. She reached for him, her hand on his arm, and he didn't flinch, just let her pull him in. His forehead dropped to hers, his hands gripping her waist like she was the only thing holding him up. I don't know how to do this, he whispered, his voice breaking. You don't have to, she said, soft but firm. Not alone. They stood there, wrapped up in each other, the city pulsing outside, until he nodded, a small, shaky thing. Okay, he said finally. I'll see him. But you're there. Deal, she said, and kissed him quick, sealing it. Back in Chicago the next day, Tamia stood with Malcolm in the hospital parking lot, Jada inside with Loretta, catching up. The air was cold, sharp with the promise of snow, and Roland Reed pulled up in a beat-up sedan, nothing like the sleek rides Malcolm rolled in. He climbed out slow, older than Tamia expected. Gray hair, gaunt face, a cane steadying him. His eyes, though, those gray eyes, were Malcolm's, no question. Malcolm, Roland said, his voice rough, stopping a few feet away. Roland, Malcolm shot back, his tone ice, his hand tight in Tamia's. You got 5 minutes. Roland nodded, leaning on his cane. I'm not here for forgiveness, just to say I fucked up. Left you when you needed me. I was a coward, and I've paid for it every day since. Malcolm didn't move, didn't soften, but Tamia felt his grip tighten. Why now? He asked, low and hard. Cancer, Roland said, blunt. Pancreatic, stage 4. I've got a daughter, your sister Nia. She's in Detroit, doesn't know you. I didn't tell her till now. Tamia's breath caught, her eyes snapping to Malcolm. His face went still, then pale, his hand slipping from hers. A sister? Yeah, Roland said, pulling a photo from his coat. A young woman, mid-20s, dark skin, sharp eyes, holding a kid. Her mom was after your mom. I messed that up too. Malcolm stared at the photo, his voice barely audible. You kept her from me. I kept everything from you. Roland said, his voice cracking. I'm sorry, son. I don't have long to fix it, but I'm trying. Tamia stepped closer, her hand on Malcolm's back, steadying him. He didn't say anything, just took the photo, his fingers trembling. Roland watched, tears in his eyes, then turned back to the car. Roland, Malcolm called, stopping him. She know I'm here? Not yet, Roland said. Up to you. Malcolm nodded, slow, and Roland drove off, the sedan rattling into the dusk. Tamia wrapped her arms around him, his breath shaky against her neck. A sister, he murmured, disbelieving. All this time. Yeah, she said, holding tight. You're not alone anymore. Weeks later, the Jackson Reed Community Clinic opened in Southside, a low brick building buzzing with life. Jada, stronger now, stood with Tamia and Malcolm at the ribbon cutting, her grin wide as she showed off a new app she'd built with Nia, Roland's daughter, who'd flown in from Detroit, wary but willing. Loretta stood nearby, her arms crossed but her eyes soft, a grudging nod to Malcolm as he shook hands with the crowd. Tamia leaned into him, the cold biting her cheeks, his arm around her a quiet anchor. Roland was gone. Passed a week ago, quiet in a hospice bed. But he'd left them Nia, a bridge Malcolm was still learning to cross. The clinic hummed behind them, kids laughing, nurses bustling, a promise kept. You did this, she said, her voice low, her hand finding his. We did, he corrected, kissing her temple. You showed me how. She smiled, real and full, the shadow gone. They weren't perfect. Southside and his world still clashed. Nia's trust was shaky, and the future loomed big. But they were here, together, and that was enough. Hey, y'all. That's the journey of Tamia and Malcolm. What a ride. Loved it? Subscribe and leave a comment. What's your favorite moment? See y'all next time.